This is the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting. Good evening. An oil tanker ran aground today off the nation's northernmost ice-free port, Valdez, Alaska. The first pictures are just in, and the consequences are costly. Tonight, the Interior Department said it fears that much wildlife will be killed. Jerry Bowen in Los Angeles has the pictures and the story.
Oil from the stranded tanker Exxon Valdez was gushing into Prince William Sound today at the rate of 20,000 barrels an hour, creating an oil slick 5 miles long, 1,000 feet wide, according to Coast Guard officials, who say it's the worst spill to hit this area since the Alaska pipe.
I've been demanding that there be more equipment available on site at each drilling area.
You have to have it sort of dispersed around the world so that you can handle these problems anywhere.
Already, a humpback whale and numbers of sea lions have been seen trying to navigate through the slick. There are concerns now for the salmon and halibut fishing grounds. Fears, too, that the oil is headed for shore.
We're going to have a heck of a mess here, and I think it's going to hit the beaches pretty hard.
Exxon officials say tonight it may be 2 days before the oil flow from the tanker Valdez can be stopped. Jerry Bowen, CBS News, Los Angeles.
And now the story that will get major headlines in many newspapers tomorrow, the major agreement officially announced today between Congress and the White House on what is called a new bipartisan policy toward Central America. It calls for millions of dollars in new non-lethal aid to the Nicaraguan rebels, and it shifts the United States away from the failed Reagan administration attempt at a military solution. CBS News White House correspondent Leslie Stahl has more on this newfound unity on a historically divisive issue.
After weeks of secret negotiations with the Democrats in Congress, President Bush announced a compromise agreement on Contra-Aid, his first step at building a bipartisan foreign policy.
We, the executive and the Congress, Republicans and Democrats, will be speaking with one voice on an extremely important foreign policy issue, Central America.
In the deal, the Democrats agree to continue funding the Contras with $45 million in purely humanitarian aid for 10 months. If after 6 months the Contras engage in any military activity or human rights violations, the money stops. In return, the president commits the U.S. to the Central American Peace Plan and the eventual reintegration of the rebels into Nicaraguan political life. That, in effect, puts an end to Ronald Reagan's military approach to the region, which the Democratic Congress had continually rejected.
We all have to admit that the policy basically failed to some extent because we were not united. We had an executive branch going in one direction and a legislative branch going in another.
But the new aid package must still pass Congress, where there will be some opposition. And what if the Nicaraguan government does not open its political system to its opponents?
If not, and if the Sandinistas start doing what they've been so good at, saying one thing and doing another, then you're going to see at least an effort for military aid by some in the Congress.
The Bush administration offered some incentives to the Sandinistas, suggesting that if they democratize their system, the U.S. would lift the trade embargo. In Nicaragua, the government neither condemned nor approved the new policy.
This type of declaration is precisely what the United States government believed was necessary in order to save face.
In Washington, today's agreement was like a treaty signing, for the moment ending 2 wars. The one in Central America and the one between the administration and Congress over how to deal with the Contras.
I see that noxious glue of mistrust beginning to dissolve.
President Bush is creating his own style of governing. Before he publicly defines his position, he strikes a compromise with the Democrats. Critics say that's not leadership. His friends say it's the only way to get things done. Leslie Stahl, CBS News, the White House.
Oliver North's lawyers moved again today, trying to compel former President Reagan to give sworn testimony for the defense in North's criminal trial. North's lawyers have been working to portray Mr. Reagan as much more directly involved in the Iran-Contra fiasco and possible law-breaking than the former president ever has admitted. Linda Tyra is one of several reporters we have covering the case.
Former President Reagan, now in retirement in California, may be called back to Washington next week in connection with the one thing he has sought so hard to escape, the Iran-Contra affair. Lawyers for Oliver North today filed a motion seeking to force Mr. Reagan to testify as its lead-off witness 1 week from today. In a pretrial decision, Judge Gerhard Gazelle ordered Mr. Reagan be subject to call. North's attorneys have argued he was not a renegade staff member of the National Security Council, but a loyal Reagan soldier operating under a belief that the president wanted to keep the Contras alive body and soul. Former National Security Advisor Robert McFarland provided the strongest testimony so far that Mr. Reagan actually authorized specific actions to aid the Contras during a congressional ban on U.S. support. Documents produced during McFarland's testimony showed the former president personally telephoned the Honduran president to expedite a transfer of arms to the Contras. Mr. Reagan approved $110 million in aid to Honduras if it helped the Contras. And the former president authorized a plan to airdrop intelligence and rifles to the Contras. If Mr. Reagan comes to court, it will be the first time he'll be called to answer questions in public under oath about the most controversial and difficult period of his presidency. The Justice Department said tonight it will fight to keep that from happening. Linda Tyra, CBS News, Washington.
A New York City courtroom was crowded this afternoon for the final act in a harrowing drama. It was the Joel Steinberg trial. Steinberg earlier convicted of manslaughter for the beating death of his illegally adopted daughter. Richard Schlesinger reports on perhaps the nation's best-known child abuse case.
It was a sensational trial that shocked New York and focused the nation's attention on the horrors of child abuse. Today, Joel Steinberg, convicted in the death of 6-year-old Lisa Steinberg, got the maximum sentence, 8 1/3 to 25 years in state prison, and the judge recommended against parole. For the first time since his trial began, Steinberg spoke in court, denying he killed Lisa, insisting he still loved her, at one point describing himself as a victim.
I sustained the huge loss. One that I invested in greatly, I cared about. I feel that pain every day. That's my loss.
While on trial, Steinberg was called a monster. At one point, the mayor of New York said Steinberg should be boiled in oil. Today, prosecutors were more muted, but insisted on the maximum sentence.
Mr. Steinberg deserves no sympathy. He has never shown sympathy for anyone else in his lifetime.
And the judge agreed after noting what he called Steinberg's lack of concern for Lisa while she lay in a coma.
The defendant has never expressed or displayed any remorse. He has never accepted any responsibility. I have come to believe he is incapable of accepting responsibility.
Before the sentencing, Judge Rothwax received 100 letters, most demanding the harshest punishment. The judge said he ignored those letters, that it was the facts in this case that convinced him to give Steinberg the maximum sentence. Richard Schlesinger, CBS News, New York.
Still to come on the Good Friday CBS Evening News, Richard Roth on taxes as a weapon in the troubled Holy Land. And James Hattori on collection plate trouble for television evangelists.
Freedent's the one. If you've got dental work, you've got 3 great reasons to chew Freedent Gum. You know Freedent won't stick to your dental work. And Freedent freshens your breath. But maybe you didn't know that Freedent moistens your mouth. So if you hate a dry mouth like I do, chew Freedent.
Freedent's the one that took the stick out of gum, and Freedent moistens your mouth. Yeah, moistens your mouth, and freshens your breath while you chew.
Non-stick Freedent moistens your mouth and freshens your breath. What's the one double-strength antacid doctors recommend most? Double-strength Mylanta 2. And what's the one double-strength antacid pharmacists recommend most? Double-strength Mylanta 2. After all, it gives you nearly double the acid-neutralizing power of any leading regular-strength brand. So for fast, effective relief, double-strength Mylanta 2. That's the one. And by the way, what's the one double-strength antacid hospitals use most?
What's the best kind of fruit? The kind that's fresh, moist, and plump. That's why Sunsweet are my favorite kind of pitted prunes. Moist, plump, and fresh. Sunsweet, because the best prunes are fresh prunes.
For post-natural bran flakes, John Newcomb on getting the best out of life.
Staying on top requires a good serve, strong approach, and a great put away.
Reach for the best-tasting high-fiber bran flake. Post bran flakes at their best.
Christians around the world today observed Good Friday. In Jerusalem, pilgrims retraced the path Jesus walked to his crucifixion. Israeli soldiers stood guard, and there were fewer tourists than usual because of the 15-month-old Palestinian Uprising. The Intifada, as it is known, has resulted in more than 400 deaths among Palestinians and at least 18 among Israelis. Now, correspondent Richard Roth reports the Israelis are employing a new non-lethal weapon trying to put down the uprising.
When a Bedouin shepherd in the Judean hills put a new concrete cover on his ancient well earlier this year, he didn't think he had joined the Intifada. Then he got a summons for illegal construction. Destroy the well within 7 days, it said, or the Israeli army will destroy it for you. I don't understand, says Amin Shkerot. They're threatening me because I don't have a permit for my own well. The response to the Palestinian uprising isn't all bullets and tear gas. In the battle against the Intifada, the front line is sometimes just a line. And that's one sign of Israel's newest weapon against rebellion in the occupied territories. An economic weapon of new rules, new fees, and tougher tax collection, wielded by an army of bureaucrats. This month, Israeli authorities issued new ID cards in the occupied territories.
It's forbidden for the owner of this identity to enter to Israel.
They're color-coding Palestinians to keep troublemakers from traveling, and they've started new inspections at Gaza checkpoints for tax evaders. A sticker on the windshield can be checked by computer. If you haven't paid, you don't leave. There's a fine for old donkey carts that don't have new license plates, and occupation authorities now won't issue a building permit or a birth certificate or a change of address form without proof that tax payments are up to date.
They combine all the coercive power, economic as well as military, in order to break the Intifada or to show who is the master.
The owner of this store just got a new tax bill as big as ever, even though his income is way down because his store is usually closed. The Palestinian protest strike is not tax deductible.
If you want to gain something in the long run, you have to sacrifice. And money is not measured here. We are losing money, but it's not an issue.
Not an issue because inconvenience or expense, say Palestinians, can only fuel the uprising, not end it. The Intifada, they insist, has become just as certain as death or taxes. Richard Roth, CBS News, Gaza.
What do more drivers say after an oil change with Pennzoil at Jippy Lube?
I can drive for miles and miles. I can drive for miles and miles. I can drive for miles and miles and miles and miles.
Every 3,000 miles, quality Pennzoil, lube, fluids, 10 minutes. Jippy Lube, we give more cars more miles and miles.
Financial serenity. It takes confidence, control. Travelers has been delivering on this promise of financial peace of mind for 125 years. With carefully controlled investments, with insurance protection you can trust. The Travelers, you're better off under the umbrella.
Great news. I don't need surgery for my hemorrhoids. The doctor said they're not that serious. He said use Preparation H.
Preparation H helps shrink swelling of tissues as it often relieves pain and itching for hours. Preparation H, also in new cream.
This year, even if you have to pay money to the government, there's still a way you can get money back. From Subaru.
Up to $1,500 back or 4.9 financing on a Subaru.
The Soviet Union is holding first in a lifetime multi-candidate elections this weekend. They are for a new parliament. One race to watch involves Gorbachev protege Boris Yeltsen, who has been punished for saying Communist Party reforms are going too slowly. Barry Peterson is our correspondent on the Yeltsin campaign.
There are growing signs that Communist Party maverick Boris Yeltsin has won his campaign to represent Moscow, even before the first public ballots are cast in Sunday's historic election. CBS News has learned of a poll by a Soviet agency showing Yeltsin with 78% of the expected vote. And more, senior Communist Party members are saying privately tonight there is, as one put it, no doubt Yeltsin will win. It's an admission the party leadership has conceded victory to Yeltsin, even though many oppose his populist views. Only massive election fraud could take that victory away, and the expectation now is that's unlikely. That's because a Yeltsin defeat would destroy confidence in the elections Mikhail Gorbachev designed and ordered. And Gorbachev has made himself an example of his own call for democracy. In recent balloting among several hundred top communists for special seats set aside for the party, there were 12 votes against Gorbachev. Even more stunning, the no votes were reported in the party's own newspaper.
An admission on the part of this leadership that there are real disagreements within the Central Committee, in effect the assembly, the ruling assembly of this country, and that these disagreements about the reforms are going to continue.
Disagreements among candidates are playing out nightly in television debates that leave old-timers agog at the openness and candidates scrambling for answers about problems with food, the economy, the environment. In the Baltic states, electioneering has sometimes spilled into the streets as conservative communists are pitted against those who want more independence from the Soviet Union itself. Even in Moscow, supporters for candidates have discovered that democracy means they can take over street corners at will. They were setting up this evening for the first competitive elections since the 1920s. True, 85% of the candidates are from the Communist Party, but there is still something not seen on many ballots here in a long time, a choice. Barry Peterson, CBS News, Moscow.
A Good Friday procession in South Africa today had special significance. It was a show of support for hunger strikers who, the marchers say, are being crucified for the truth. Correspondent Martha Teichner has our report.
Slowly, as muffled church bells tolled, 1,000 people marched through Durban today in a solemn Good Friday remembrance dedicated to Sandile Tusi, a political detainee hospitalized in his 35th day without food, longer than any other South African hunger striker. He has become the symbol of the plight of South Africa's detainees held without trial. Sandile Tusi, briefly seen here at his hospital window, is now in critical condition. He has lost nearly 60 pounds. His eyesight is failing. Tusi was a university researcher and youth leader. His mother believes she is about to lose her son to the anti-apartheid struggle.
She is very weak. Many days not weak. You not eat. I think you die.
Everything here in South Africa is wrong. If you want your rights, you are wrong. What my uncle is doing, it's another way of showing that South Africa is in the state of war.
The sensitivity of the issue was apparent today when a dozen of Tusi's friends arrived at the hospital carrying a wooden cross they wanted to give to him. Suddenly outnumbered 5-1 by riot police, they were forced to leave. If Tusi dies, the South African government would come under intense international pressure to resolve the detainee issue. Since the hunger strikes began last month, nearly 600 detainees have been released. But what was intended as a gesture to defuse the emotionalism surrounding the issue has done just the opposite. And now anti-apartheid groups have a potential martyr, Sandile Tusi, ready to die unless the government caves in and releases him and other detainees first. Martha Teichner, CBS News, Durban.
A U.S. Air Force Delta rocket blasted off from Cape Canaveral today, carrying the third in a series of Star Wars missile defense experiments. This one is a $140 million satellite. For the next 6 to 9 months in orbit, it's supposed to test the ability of high-tech sensors to detect launches of enemy missiles.
Well, you're in trouble already. I don't do flakes anymore. Come on, you want to make a splash for the cereal today, you got to jazz it up. Nuts, chocolate chips. Nothing here but flakes. Not something so simple. Now, I see you don't want to be full of stuff like the other guys. They zig, you zag. Very clever. I like it.
Kellogg's Corn Flakes.
Corn Flakes?
Taste them again for the first time.
When my arthritis pain acts up, even little things are a big effort. But I don't take aspirin anymore. I take Advil. Advil is the brand many doctors recommend for hours of relief from minor arthritis pain. You know, just one Advil is as effective as 2 regular aspirin. And Advil doesn't upset my stomach the way aspirin sometimes can. So now, I don't even have to think about arthritis. Advil, tablets and caplets, advanced medicine for pain.
April in Paris.
He said he'd give me Paris wrapped up in ribbons. But he was young and poor. So we settled for a small cafe and coffee. Coffee so rich, I thought I'd never taste its like again.
Discover the pleasure of rich French roast, new from Maxwell House. Rich French roast coffee. We can't give you France, but we'll give you the flavor.
New troubles today for television evangelists Jim and Tammy Baker, but the Bakers are not alone. As James Hattori reports tonight, other TV preachers are in trouble too. Millions of viewers have lost faith in them.
Is this the last program in the house? Maybe the next to the last program.
The last program in the house, yeah.
Good Friday brought bad tidings for Jim and Tammy Baker. They're losing their satellite TV equipment, the local zoning board wants them out, and viewer support is off.
We have got bills to pay that must be paid now, or some people want to pull the plug on us, so...
The Bakers may move to Florida, but that doesn't guarantee more viewers will warm to their show. Many televangelists, still tainted by the PTL and Jimmy Swaggart scandals, have seen TV ratings fall flat.
I can directly attribute 2.5 million viewers leaving religious television. That's a fourth of their audience.
Over the last 2 years, Jimmy Swaggart lost more than 60% of his viewers. Half of Oral Roberts' audience tuned out. Pat Robertson lost 60% of his faithful. Jerry Falwell down about 45%. Even the most popular minister on TV, Robert Schuller, has 1/3 fewer viewers. With more than 50 TV evangelists filling the airwaves with prayers for financial deliverance, sometimes the appeals for money outnumber the appeals for devotion.
It can be $1,000, it can be $500.
We need those funds desperately.
You can put it on the MasterCard, the Visa card.
But I've got to hear from all of you. We won't make it unless we do.
They're manipulating the viewers. They're trying to get money, playing on the sympathy of the viewers.
People aren't going to take it anymore. People aren't going to write this guys a blank check like they used to.
Losses in support and credibility have prompted the National Association of Religious Broadcasters to begin a campaign of accountability.
Are your audits publicly available to anyone? Are you open to the media? Can they visit your facilities, walk through your cash room? The fact is that we're better off now than it did happen.
Despite a smaller audience, broadcast ministries still take in $1 billion a year. But until they restore viewer confidence, many TV churches will have a tougher time filling the collection plate. James Hattori, CBS News, Lynchburg, Virginia.
When we go on vacation, I take a bottle with me. If his back acts up, I know Metoprine's definitely going to work.
I'm a 5th grade teacher, which means big headaches, which means Metoprine.
Metoprine has ibuprofen, and nothing's proven faster.
Metoprine really works.
When the pain gets tough, get Metoprine.
We've studied your mouth from every angle and created a toothbrush with a very special angle, the Reach toothbrush, with a dental angle designed to clean even back teeth better, to get your teeth 51% cleaner than the other leading brush. Reach for 51% cleaner teeth.
Oh, the magic's gone. The minute the lights go out, you fall asleep.
It's time to change your bulb to Phillips. Phillips Longer Life Square bulbs last 33% longer than ordinary round bulbs.
Excuse me, ever try this coffee?
Oh, no. I use special gourmet beans.
So do we.
Ah, I roast them to perfection.
So do we.
I brew fresh, rich coffee.
So do we, but then we freeze dry to lock in superior fresh brewed flavor and aroma until you release it.
Perfect. Who are you?
We're the only ones who do all this. We're Taster's Choice, the choice for taste.
Now at last, a Hollywood story with a very happy ending. We told you the first part of the story not long ago. Tonight, David Browning is back with the last part, the best part.
You may remember Lyle Wheeler. Back in his heyday, he was art director at 20th Century Fox, responsible for the overall look of hundreds of classic films at Fox and elsewhere.
Recently, we told the story of how money problems forced Lyle Wheeler to give up the 5 Academy Awards he'd won.
The Lyle Wheeler for art direction, Gone with the Wind.
How Lyle Wheeler's Oscars were about to be auctioned off.
I would do everything to get them back.
And I just saw his face, and, well, it really almost brought tears to my eyes.
In Tuxedo, New York, Bill Kaiser heard about Lyle Wheeler's plight. A movie buff with his own collection of memorabilia, Kaiser had seen many of Wheeler's movies. The King and I, Rebecca, There's No Business Like Show Business.
The name to me was also almost like a household name, and I said, gee, you know, I'm going to get those Oscars back from her, or one of the Oscars. I'm going to certainly do everything within my power to do it.
Bill Kaiser and his wife Joan talked it over and decided to dip into their savings to buy one of Wheeler's Oscars from the people in California who now own them. To buy it and give it back to Lyle Wheeler. The price would be $21,000. And today, in the same room where they held the very first Academy Awards more than 60 years ago, there was a surprise ceremony for Lyle Wheeler.
I would like to represent to you and return to you that which is most rightfully yours.
Bill Kaiser gave him the Oscar Wheeler won for The Diary of Anne Frank in 1959.
I give it back to you where it belongs.
Thank you very much. Well, I want to put it someplace where it won't be stolen.
This year's real Oscar ceremony isn't until next Wednesday. But for Bill Kaiser and Lyle Wheeler, the results are already in, and both are winners. David Browning, CBS News, Hollywood.
And that's the CBS Evening News for this Good Friday. Dan Rather. Bob Schieffer will be here tomorrow. Happy Easter, everyone. See you Monday. Good night.
Madness continues with prime-time doubleheader action. Illinois battles Louisville, then Georgetown faces NC State tonight on CBS Sports.
This is CBS.